Hi, my name is Ken Rasmussen. I just added today the ability to use your samples and symptoms in combination to suggest probiotics that have an increased odds of helping you. Notice I habitually use the word odds because it's not guaranteed. It simply makes it more likely. And odds is the best we can do. I'm not a deity. It may look like one, but I'm not. Besides, I'm the wrong gender. Okay. So if you go in and you will see your samples and you will see underneath it probiotics based on symptoms. You just click it, goes through, and if you have no symptoms entered, bad person, then you see no symptom entered. No information in, no information out. Get those symptoms added. If you do have the symptoms in, it will come and show you a list. And I'll step through that in a moment. And the list will show you by retail probiotic product and the weight. So some products consist of just a single species, some consist of 4, some consist of many. And what this does is basically gives you the weight, which means the weight in terms of the odds. So the ones with the highest weight, the odds of it improving is the highest. So basically the weight is a aggregation of odds for each of the enzymes, etc. See my previous video to get a bit more detail. We have a number of species in it, which is basically informational. Usually we end up going with one as a preference. And then enzyme means is a generally not much use, but it's sort of how many enzymes are in this which are being impacted. For example, the best one we have 22 enzymes. The next one down we have 29. So it has significant more enzymes being affected, 27, 27, etc. So as always, we can click on those to sort by high or low. But in this case, the ones with the best is myricin. The best weight is prescriptive cyst, etc. So basically it gives you a list based on your symptoms you have entered. You change the symptoms, this list may change. So remember, get those symptoms in, and also by entering those symptoms, you allow us our next iteration of the data to be more accurate. So there's a double benefit. You benefit because you get suggestions, and everybody else benefits because your information is now going to be added into the next calculations. So a couple of just caveats here. These are retail probiotics by name. You may not have them available in your jurisdiction. In some cases, they may be specific locations or countries. Sometimes you'll see ES being Spain, or DE meaning Germany, or AU meaning Australia in the name. I don't know where you are usually, and so I've tried wherever people have sent me information about probiotics to add them into the base so that there will be probiotics available for wherever you are in the world. But that depends on you telling me and sending me a link to where the ingredients are for various probiotics which are in your jurisdiction. Then I'll just add it in, and it's a simple add process, and then it will be in the list. So again, by you helping me, by providing the information, you help yourself, which is what citizens in science is. It's a two-way street. Okay, description there, and now we do a practical example. We got the suggestions up above, and I'm going to do cross-validations. And the reason I'm doing cross-validation is because we actually are now up to at least 4 different ways of doing probiotic selections. Do they all agree or they disagree? And if they disagree, what do we do about it? So let's go into it. You want to have the best odds, which means you want to look at all 4 different opinions, all 4 different processes. Each process uses a different mechanism, a different set of calculations to try figuring out what is ideal for you. And so you want to do them, look at the results, and end up hopefully with a winning set of suggestions. So second way to cross-validate is just using the Cake AI suggested probiotics. This one does not make use of the symptoms. Actually, it also makes use of some other information derived from Cake. It's what I had originally done months and months ago. but it's still accurate in terms of what it does. Up above, we are using enzymes only because we discovered that, hey, enzymes are definitely strongly connected to symptoms in the most unusual way, as my previous YouTube video explaining. And then we get down here, and the thing is, we find these two are on the top of the list, and those two are, guess what, in our symptom-related list. So we have happiness, we have agreement. Hey, you get a second opinion, and a second opinion comes back almost the same. We have something else shows up here, and that may well be something significant, but not connected to the symptoms you have entered. Remember, adding the symptoms ends up filtering things. So some of the stuff in this set of things won't necessarily be in the above because it may be connected to different symptoms or for any one of a dozen other reasons. So there we go. Now the third way is to look at the samples and pick bacteria through one of the many ways and seeing what the suggestions are. This way tends to be a little bit like Russian roulette. You may get agreement, you may get disagreement. So it's a little bit iffy. What we do find is that when we do it, we find that one of the things up above, which is the Lactobacillus solanius, is actually a negative impact. So now we have two saying one thing, one saying something else, or perhaps just one on one, but we have a disagreement. So let's see what we can do about it. We have four basic ways of determining what to do. We have the symptoms in KEGG, which is the first way what I'm talking about. We have KEGG all by itself. We have the literature, which I made reference to up above. And we have some suggestions. So we have done three of them. The fourth one is look at the literature. And we do have a link which takes us to a page. I'll type in, actually I just typed in Lactobacillus solanius, which is sufficient to get a list. And then we see name of the studies, etc. One of the studies indicate it helps with sad moods. Person in his symptoms had symptoms which are similar to sad moods, so therefore it would appear to help with the symptom which the person had identified. So we end up having a third vote for taking it and one contrary, and the one contrary is probably the least supportable one. The other ones are better supported. Clinical studies and using the actual DNA are much better than trying to interpolate fragments of clinical studies against the complete microbiome, which means you are looking at a different target. Here we are looking specifically at trying to improve symptoms, not fix the microbiome as a whole, just improve symptoms. Okay, so at the bottom in this post, I also say, okay, let's go and give some detective analogy. When we are doing KEGG, we're actually doing DNA. It's like a detective finding, okay, your DNA was in the room where somebody was killed. Okay, that's pretty strong evidence. Doesn't mean it's as strong as we want. When we do KEGG and the microbiome sample, it's similar to, hey, okay, we have a DNA of you in the room and we have video of you in the room, which is in combination pretty good. And the video shows you in the room about the time we know the person was killed, but it doesn't show you killing. But we place you in the room at the right period of time, and we find your DNA in the room. So it's pretty strong evidence implying you had something to do with the crime. And the crime here is microbiome dysfunction. Research studies is basically profiling by race, gender, age, etc. And the key thing is to remember studies are being done on population, not individuals. So that is effectively what you're doing. You are doing you're using research studies, which are basically profiling studies, not individual studies. And you're going from that one. Not quite as good as the top two. I mean, oh, wait a minute. He's a 20-year-old. He is of Spanish descent. Therefore, he must have committed the breaking B&E, the breaking entering. Yeah, in some courtrooms in some countries, that's probably enough to convict. But properly, that's not enough evidence. But it may be sufficient evidence for at least suggesting what is the most likely group of people to look at. And then the suggestion based on bacteria picked, it's something like setting up roadblocks trying to find drunk drivers. When you set up the roadblocks, for example, Christmas Eve or on Sunday morning in Easter, has a big impact on whether or not you are going to find drunk drivers. So the number of people arrested for drunk driving depends very much on how the location was selected. Similar here, suggestions are based on how the bacteria were done. The choices there, and there's a fair number of choices, were done to give you choices on doing it. And it's not quite the same goal, but it's trying to fix things in general. And so it's not as targeted as using DNA, IgDNA, with video showing you the right location or in the right area. That ends up being the strongest hunk of evidence. And that is, in my opinion, the one which is preferred to work from. Okay, so that is walking through the process. Now let's go and actually hand walk through an example. So here we are, an example, and if you go down here, and we see probiotic based on symptoms, and this should always show up no matter what display level you pick. Be careful to remember, display level hides some stuff unless you are highest enough display level, and that is because some people are saturated with too much information. So we click here, and voila, it just goes and spells everything out. Same number as before because it's the same sample. You can go here and you can change your samples if you want. So you can go and look at the prior sample and see what changed. Prior sample Mirarisum was still there, Plantarum, but the Prescript Assist was not there. So it is a recent addition. It didn't make it on the prior sample. So you can just go through, perhaps look at two, if you have multiple samples over time, look at 2 or 3, find out what is common. Because remember, samples has some volatility to it. If you look at multiple samples over time, you could have a lot less volatility. So there we have Plantarum Mirarisum, the same 2 top ones. So that is method number 1, which is probably in my humble opinion, seems to be the best predictor of probiotics to help. So we return to our menu and now go down here, and I was looking for cake probiotic and it's not there. And the reason is very simple. If you go to the top, I have the wrong display level. So I'm going to up it to a higher level, and we go back here, and now we see the Cake AI suggested probiotics. So it's a little bit more sophisticated, which is why it's not at the first level. It takes a little bit more understanding to use it properly, or to understand what we're trying to do. We click that, and now it'll go through everything and come back with its suggestions. And we have these 2, which is the common throughout, which means there. Now if you click on here, you see exactly the bacteria in it. And if you go back and click on the next one, which was Plantarum, you see both of these are single species probiotics, which I have a general preference for. So you can just go down and you notice 6804 are all the same number. Chances are, and if you look over here, you say, oh yes, they are on the same species. So basically, a bunch of different products by name, all of them the same species. and you can go whichever one is available in your country. Ideally, the one that has the best pricing for building community forming units, CFUs. So the third way of getting probiotic suggestion is going over and changing your microbiome, and you can go and do some of the canned things for chronic fatigue or for their let's do chronic fatigue for brain fog, goes through, comes there, and down the bottom we have the probiotic list, and we have everything listed there, and you can scan through, see if you can find anything. We actually don't have, we have just one which is a negative impact from one of the list. And most of the others are somewhere in here. It should be. Very recent. Somewhere in there I can see there's a whole long list of mixed impact and the value, so you can go and see there. So it is there, and I believe the value is probably positive. Let's look for plantarum. Plantarum is this as having a small positive. Oh, it's just actually up there as a favorable probiotic, and down here it's a favorable. So you can cross-reference that way to get a feeling there. Now, just remember, your choice of filtering by bacteria, which is shown up here, determines which probiotics will come in, because we're only looking at probiotics which impact these. We're not looking at anything dealing with enzymes. We're just looking at things which, in some clinical studies somewhere, it impact those things. Perhaps there are none, in which case we are using other bits of information. So that is basically it. And remember that the numbers below are a reflection of the number of studies showing resolvable impact in the right direction. So if something has very few studies, then it will not show up as much as one with who have been well studied. In other words, hey, the impact could be the same as one that's top of the list or better, but because it's not studied as much, and that is how we are determining the order. How well studied is it? Because we know we get contradictory results from studies. So the best way is say how many studies say it does, how many studies says it doesn't. So the more studied it is, the higher on the list it will be. The fewer studies, the lower on the list. Does not mean it is good or bad. It just simply means this is how well studied it is. Okay, so that is the third way. Now we go back and we do the fourth way. In the fourth way, we go up here and we go in and search for probiotic by studies. So their keyword, which is a mistake I made when I was actually prepping for this video, was you can go in and type in name of something like colostrum right there, and you can see the studies which are involved for that one. Here another one, and this is the actual mere reason. And you see there are 40 studies showing an impact, and you could take a look for the topics or actually go and click and see the actual studies to see whether or not it has a positive impact on the symptoms you are describing. Now we can do the same thing for Sylvanas. I'll do partial typing, and I think I did a typo. Yes, now we have it, and we should somewhere there, right there we are. We have one form of it which has 9 different studies on it, and you can go through and take a look at those. And we actually have another one another strain, which is again, this is all by individual strain, which we have 4. So we have 13 studies at least. And just do a quick scan to see if anything else shows up. That appears to be it. So we have 14 studies showing that it has an impact on stock or not, depending on it. But things like cognitive activity, desired mood, that is a close match to one of the symptoms. So I would say yes, go for it. So we have now done the 4 ways. Now, that's basically it, and it is based on you having a sample there and having symptoms there. I'll do another video in a day or 2, hopefully, if you remember to do it. If you don't have a sample, if you have a sample and don't have symptoms, it's your own fault. Fix it. If you don't have a sample, but you have an oats test or something else, then there are other ways of getting somewhere in the ballpark. Not going to be as accurate, not going to be as precise as what we are doing here, but it's at least better than nothing, or better than randomly trying things. Video up. So, okay, that's about it. I'll shut up and let you get to exploring. Again, remember, key mistakes people making are forgetting to change the display level. Higher the display level, the more options you have on the menus, which some people get, especially those with brain fog, as in long COVID or chronic fatigue syndrome, is saturating. So that was added to try making the site a little bit easier to use without hiding too much information. You just set the display level as appropriate. Okay, that's it.